So part 5 of session 2 is looking at Coshh, and we're going to discuss what that is now. So the aims of this session, what I want you guys to be able to do at the end of this session, is explain what is meant by Coshh and what aspects of work the regulations refer to. I also want you to be able to identify Coshh symbols and explain what they mean, and list some substances that would be covered by Coshh and some PPE that we might use to protect ourselves from these. But also, I've not written down here, I want you guys to be able to tell me what Coshh stands for. Okay? So Coshh. Coshh stands for the control of substances hazardous to health. And it literally does what it says in the tin. It is regulations which are around controlling substances at work which might be hazardous to our health. Like with the working at heights regs and pretty much every other set of safety regs out there, there is a requirement for the employer to make an assessment of risk, an assessment of risk specifically with Coshh around substances which may cause us harm. Some of these are dangerous solids, dangerous liquids, dusts, interestingly, fumes, vapours, gases, and microorganisms. And these risks to health should be considered by the employer, evaluated, and they should try and remove these risks wherever possible. If a product's covered by Coshh, it will have a sign showing how it's potentially dangerous. Any substances covered by Coshh will also have any substances covered by Coshh will also have something called a Coshh data sheet. So the symbol for explosive is this thing here. Looks a bit like an explosion. And explosive chemicals are things that might explode. And these are the meanings here. So it's things that might have the explosive symbol on, might be unstable explosives, may explode in a fire. They're an explosion hazard, essentially. Flammable is this symbol here. It's the same, just the same as on the warning signs, essentially, like we talked about in the last session. So flammable, these are things that might catch fire easily, essentially. They just need a very brief contact with an ignition source. So gas bottles, flammable aerosols, liquid canisters, and flammable solids, all of these should have that symbol. Oxidizing. Oxidizing looks kind of similar to the flammable symbol, except it's got a big O in the middle there, O for oxidizing. And essentially, these are things that might add more oxygen, might react with certain things to increase the amount of oxygen in the air. And if you increase the amount of oxygen in the air, you also increase the risk of fire. And that's why it's a sort of flaming O, essentially. So things with this sign on might cause or intensify fire by releasing more oxygen, and potentially cause fires or explosions. It might be found on bleach or oxygen for medical purposes. Gas under pressure. It's this symbol here. Obviously it looks like a cricket bat, but yeah, it looks like a gas canister. Okay. Gas stored under pressure would have this symbol. So things that are, yeah, like I say, literally just gas under pressure. Any gas that's contained in a bottle under pressure should have this symbol. We'll see it probably on our gas bottles. Corrosive. is this symbol here. And essentially it's chemicals that may destroy living tissue on contact. So it also would be corrosive, things that might be corrosive to metals. So anything with a corrosive symbol could cause severe skin burns, severe chemical burns, severe eye damage. So you need to be really careful if something's corrosive. Make sure that you wear appropriate protective equipment. You might find this in drain cleaners, any acids essentially, ammonia. Toxic, it's a symbol here. Essentially toxic means poisonous. If something's toxic, if you ingest it by taking it in through your mouth or breathing it in, it could cause damage to your health, and it potentially could lead to death. So substances with this sign might be fatal if swallowed, fatal if it comes in contact with your skin, or fatal and inhaled, or potentially toxic. I mean, also toxic if swallowed, in contact with skin or inhaled, then that means it could damage your organs essentially. So you need to be really super careful with anything that's toxic. Okay. Health hazard, also known, yeah, it's got this symbol here, and it's a general Coshh symbol. Okay, it's got lots of different meanings, loads of different meanings. And if you ever see this symbol, essentially what you need to do is you need to read the supplementary information that goes alongside it. So it may mean, and this is non-exhaustive, this list, it might cause respiratory irritation, skin irritation, or eye irritation. It could be harmful, damage your health if inhaled or if swallowed, ingested. It might cause drowsiness or dizziness, and it might be harmful if it comes into contact with your skin. So there's lots of different meanings to this, and always make sure you read. Well, if you see any of these Coshh symbols before you work with the product, you should read the Coshh data sheet, which explains how to work with the product safely. Serious health hazard, also known as long-term health hazard. And these are chemicals that can cause serious long-term damage to health. For example, if something might cause occupational cancer, then it would have this symbol on it. I mean, lead, potentially, when it was packaged up, should have this symbol on it. Anything, obviously we don't use asbestos now, but if asbestos products were around these days, they would have this symbol on. Okay, so these are substances which could be fatal if swallowed or enter the airway, breathed in potentially, like asbestos fibres we're going to talk about soon. Could cause damage to the organs, damage to fertility, like lead, or potentially cause cancer. It also might be things that cause allergy or asthma symptoms. Okay, and now dangerous to the environment. You can see here we've got a sort of dead tree and fish, and the dangerous to the environment symbol would be on anything that is potentially dangerous to the environment. Means that it's going to be toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects, and you might find that in pesticides, biocides, petrol, turpentine, etc. Yeah. So Coshh essentially covers anything that could cause you ill health. That includes microorganisms or substantial quantities of dust. Dust is considered as a risk under the Coshh regs because it's a substance that will come into contact. If we breathe it in, it can cause significant damage to your lungs, especially if it's got sort of silica, sand in it, or if it's got asbestos particles. So we need to make sure that we protect ourselves from these. There's lots of different substances that would be covered by Coshh, and we're just going to look at some of them now. Okay, it's not an exhaustive list. Okay, it's not everything that we would work with that's covered by Coshh. It's just a few things to get us to think about some of the things we work with and how we can protect ourselves from that. Firstly is flux. Flux is what we use to when we solder pipes to allow the solder to run. But you should not apply it with your finger, like you can see in this picture here. You should always make sure you use a brush, because if contact with flux, it can eventually lead to dermatitis, and it's not a good thing to do. So make sure when you use flux, you apply it with a brush. Also, I mean, it wouldn't do any harm to wear gloves, for example, as well. Solder, particularly leaded solder, which we don't use for any potable or wholesome water systems, any hot or cold water systems. We shouldn't use leaded flux anymore, but you are still allowed to use it for heating systems. If the flux is leaded, then you should make sure that you take appropriate control measures. You might perhaps wear barrier cream, put some cream on your hands to protect them from the lead coming into contact with you. Soldering, when you solder, when you're using a gas bottle, which again sort of is potentially going to be gas under pressure, explosive, flammable, you should always make sure that you wear safety goggles as well to protect yourself from that hazard. Bleach, paints and white spirit, all of these you should try and avoid contact, coming into contact with your skin. Solvents, like solvent weld cement, solvent cleaner, they're both things that we should make sure that we work with in a well ventilated area, because there's fumes that come off of these that can cause you to become lightheaded and dizzy. Acids, things like drain cleaner, system cleaner, like we use for power flushing. You should make sure that you prevent these coming into contact with your body. They're corrosive. They will cause damage to your skin. So make sure that you use appropriate gloves if you do work with these, and try and prevent any chance of them coming into contact with your skin. Pipe jointing compounds. These, again, wear appropriate gloves. Fiberglass insulation. Fiberglass insulation, it's an irritant. It makes you itchy. And you should wear appropriate gloves, maybe leather gloves and overalls, to try and prevent this coming into contact with your skin. Also, glass wool insulation potentially could be a carcinogen. It's known as a class 2 carcinogen, which means that there's some people suspect that it might be a carcinogen. So also make sure, if you do work with or near glass wool insulation, that you wear an appropriate dust mask as well as the hand protection. And this is something we might come across as plumbers. You know, if you work on a drainage system, we've all come across sort of human waste essentially, and we need to make sure that we protect ourselves from that, because in there will be pathogens, you know, things that if you ingest them, they could kill you, you know. So make sure that you wear waterproof gloves if you do work on any drainage system, or gauntlets if needs be. Gauntlets are long gloves which come up to the elbow. Okay, so make sure that you protect yourself adequately if you work on drainage systems. Things like plaster and cements are both going to release a lot of dust. So if you work near people working with these, or if you work with these yourself, make sure you use a dust mask when you're mixing them up. And cement especially can cause dermatitis if it comes into contact with your hands regularly. So make sure that you prevent it coming into contact with your hands by using appropriate gloves. Alrighty, so if large amounts of any Coshh products were released into the environment, you should let the environmental agency know. Make sure that you deal with any spills in line with what it says in the Coshh data sheet. Always make sure you read the Coshh data sheet before you use the product, so you know how to safely use it, essentially. If there was a big spill or fire caused by chemicals on site, essentially you'd have to implement the site emergency plan, which would normally be evacuate the people to a safe place and go from there, really. Alrighty, so finally, okay, the sitting guilds have asked us a few times, so who would you inform if you had poured a large amount of disinfectant down the drain? Well, actually, who you should inform is the Water Authority, which is essentially the water supply company, because they're the people who are responsible, generally speaking, in almost all cases, also for the removal of the water through the drains. Okay. Alrighty, so now you've got your task. Okay, good luck.